Serenity Point Press presents Reflections on Spectacle Pond, the weekly edition. Poetry and photography by George Kinder. Read for you by George Kinder. To Kathy. Acknowledgments. For me, Reflections on Spectacle Pond is a life work, and so my acknowledgments and appreciation go all the way back to my birth, to my mother carrying me in the pond of her being, and to my first breath. This is a book called forth from the earliest days of my childhood, surrounded by nature, at the edge of a small town, in a rural county, at our home in St. Clairsville, Ohio, playing in the fields with my brothers, my best friends, and neighbors. The people of St. Clairsville were a daily support. When my mother first read picture books to me, I just wanted to live in them. My father had written his senior thesis at Princeton on the Book of Kells, which was one of the original illuminated manuscripts in the West. My great-grandfather, Jotham Potter, was one of the first Americans to visit Japan. He brought back Japanese prints that inspired me with their calligraphy and images intermingled. So when I started thinking about my own life work, my thought was to create an illuminated manuscript. Though my family was religious, I found both spirit and freedom primarily in nature. An illuminated manuscript meant to me a spiritual document filled with a richness of language and beautiful images, challenging and collaborating with each other to tell a tale of the natural world. It was with my teachers, professors, and fellow students at Exeter and Harvard that I found my calling as a poet. There I also discovered the history of art, particularly Asian art. Though my love of nature started in the fields of southeastern Ohio, it was refined by the urgent writings of scientists Rachel Carson, E.O. Wilson, and Jane Goodall, and the poetry of Mary Oliver. In my professional life, my field was training advisors to identify and then deliver their clients into their lives of greatest meaning. Many of those people turned to me and said, "What's your dream, George?" assuming I was living it professionally. But it was Ed Jacobson, a legend in the life planning world, who saw that something was missing and took me aside to say, "You're not walking the talk, George. You must live in your life plan. We need you to show us how." Great thanks to the whole life planning community for their daily reminders in their own lives of what it is to live an inspired life. Greatest of thanks to the trainers of life planning, particularly Mary Zimmerman, and most especially to our trainer of trainers, Louis Vollrecht, whose enormous gift of listening and passion for delivering all others into their dreams of freedom extended itself to me. Amongst my artist and intellectual community, great thanks to many good friends and all, but especially to Julian Powell, Tim Heath, and the Blake Society, to Drexel Ace with his editorial gifts for text and design, and to Mark Serdovan, whose creative energy and reflections on poetry, art, and meditation have been an inspiration to me for nearly 50 years. It's been an enormous amount of work to get this book to the stage of being delivered into the world. I want to give special thanks to the people who have been here throughout the process of production and design. They fall into two categories, staff and family. Laura Woodward, who has overseen much of what we've done at the Kinder Institute of Life Planning these last few years, has brought a global perspective that complements her great attention to detail and eagerness to help. A huge shout-out to Mary Ellen Grady, who's paid attention to every comma, each capitalization, line break, phrase, and word every week for 20 years as I've written and revised. Her steady presence and support have been invaluable. Over the last year, my greatest thanks go to Natalie Bonetti, who, with her eye and attention to text, has taken on the task of bringing the photographs and poetry of my nearly 30 years on Spectacle Pond week by week together into something that is lasting. To my family, I give my sincerest thanks. First, to my larger family, to my brothers for their support, particularly my brother Tom, for our many conversations arising from his love and knowledge of poetry, nature, and the life of the spirit. To my daughter, London Kinder, who created soundscapes, which I think of as sonic landscapes or even songs to accompany this work. To my daughter, Rachel Kinder, who, with her photographer's eye, has curated and culled some 35,000 photographs. She reviewed each one for every day of the year, cropping, editing, and rating for me, then to finish and choose. To my wife, Kathy, who has allowed me for all these years to spend my mornings from 6 a.m. to lunchtime in my writing and meditation cabin, where I bring focus to my creative and spiritual work and to living in nature. She has also been the most insightful reader of the poetry, knowing their Zen-like history and quality, as well as the landscape itself, and having traveled with me from gallery to gallery and museum to museum, studying the great artists. Lastly, I give thanks to my meditation community. Over the last year, each week, I presented to them a page of emergent poetry and photography from the book. Their enthusiasm encouraged me to feel that I have something worthy to share. Thank you so much for being there and for being that first audience for me.